it out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 624th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey, me, and Nancy Wolf, the astonishing Nancy Wolf.
Oh, thank you.
I used to say the astonishing Tom Fennell. I miss Tom, but, you know, I would miss you if you disappeared. I miss everybody.
Yeah.
My new thing is when somebody asks me how I am, I say, I feel great now that I've seen you. I said that to a guy who was driving a bus that I took. He thought that was really good. He liked that. Good. And I say it to people all over the place. And it's true. I do feel good because I've seen people. It's true. Anyway, we're doing this show, which is a news aggregation show about energy and climate change. We're going to be starting talking about things that have happened on the 8th of May, which was a week ago today, and we're going to be ending on the 14th of May, which was yesterday. So we're going to be doing 7 days. And we're going to be doing the material that is taken from my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com, where you can go, and if you click on the date on the calendar for the day that I tell you, you should get a listing of 15, maybe fewer, but not more, news items, and whatever we're talking about is going to be in that list, and you can click on it there on the link to the original article. The other thing is, I keep telling people, if you go down, if you scroll down, you can come to a point where there's a link to, it's going to be called tinyurl/Energy Week 642. And that'll take you to the listing for all of the stuff in this show with the pictures, with the links, nothing else. So you don't have to really go all that far. And I discovered that for some people, it's not scrolling down, it's scrolling that way.
Oh, wow. So many directions.
I don't know. You know, these computers, I have discovered, you know, I used to tell people that I discovered artificial intelligence many years ago, yeah, which was in the form in those days of artificial malice. And, you know, of late, I've realized it's not just artificial malice. It's artificial stupidity, yes, artificial laziness, artificial, you name it. Okay, should we go ahead?
Yeah, let's begin.
Our first item, this is a picture, obviously taken from above, of a blade of a turbine going around a corner. And it's drawn by a tractor, which is yellow, and it's in the upper right-hand corner. And that thing in the lower left-hand corner is the tiller vehicle, which just makes sure that the thing goes around the corner, staying relatively near the road instead of going all over the place. So this is from Renews.
Yeah, so the headline here is Vattenfall starts turbine installation in Sweden.
Vattenfall is installing 21 wind turbines at its 140 megawatt Bruzaholm. I'm just guessing at that pronunciation. I'm pronouncing it like it was German. Onshore wind farm in Sweden. The company is transporting the 83-meter-long turbine blades by special transport. There you've got a picture of it. On the roads of southern Sweden. The large crane has arrived and is starting the main installation phase. So the problem, we've talked about this before, the problem with wind farm installations is that everything is long.
Right, that's true. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
We see many pictures like this.
Yes.
Of long things.
Long things. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Should I take us to the second article?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, here's a picture of a bee, and this is an article from ABC News.
Yeah, so this headline is Why It Feels Like Allergy Season is Getting Longer and More Severe.
Well, in a nutshell, it's because it's getting longer and more severe.
Yeah, yeah.
Research shows that allergy seasons may be hitting people harder by starting earlier, lasting longer, and creating more pollen than they did 30 years ago. According to a report from the Allergy and Asthma Foundation of America, as pollen increases, so does hay fever. 30 years ago, 50 years ago, I worked in Massachusetts, and the place where I was working had walks, and I'd see piles of pollen, literally piles of pollen on the walks. If you had a crack between two pieces of concrete, the crack would be full of pollen, and if one side was lower, that would have pollen built up in it. And now we've got more. That's scary. Do you have problems with hay fever?
No, I have asthma, but I don't have it like with the things in the air. It's just breathing.
Oh, I see. My mother had hay fever, and I think she would have problems today.
Yeah, I mean, I also grew up in the city, so
Yes.
you know, there's that. That kind of gives you
No
asthma.
bees in the city?
I mean, yeah, there were bees.
There were bees, but not all that many. There used to be a guy who lived on, I'm going to say he lived on Fifth Avenue, but he had a beehive. And the bees would go out and they'd spread out over Central Park and gather whatever they could gather. It's interesting to see how things do, you know, for them it's all nature, you know. Anyway, I'm going to go to the next item unless you've got a reason not to.
No, go ahead.
We have a solar array, a picture from Light Source BP, and an article from PV Magazine Australia.
Yeah, so the headline here is 7.15 gigawatts of renewables and energy storage awarded rights to connect to NSW Res.
Yes. NSW is New South Wales.
New South Wales.
And the RES is a renewable energy zone. Yes.
It's like, I'm going to guess that's zone.
Well, it actually is.
Yeah.
The New South Wales government has awarded 10 renewable energy projects with a combined 1.75 gigawatts of energy generation and storage capacity, access rights to connect to network infrastructure in what will be the state's first renewable energy zone. And this is 7.15 gigawatts, which is huge. But it's not very big compared to something that we're going to be talking about later in this show. So, and by the way, the farmers out in that area of the world don't like this because when the thing was announced, they knew that some of them were going to have transmission lines going across their land. And those transmission lines, you know, if we in Vermont are going to refuse to have wind turbines and we're going to refuse to have solar panels because they occupy farms and so forth, which is what's happened over the years, we're going to have transmission lines bringing in the electricity from wherever it comes from, which could be the thumb of Michigan or something like that.
As opposed to microgrids.
As opposed to microgrids. And I think your position on microgrids is probably the same as mine, which is that that's what we should be doing, is building microgrids.
I mean, it's a lot more, honestly, it's a lot more sustainable because your source is so close to you.
That's right.
That when there's an issue, you can resolve it, as opposed to it being this sort of bureaucratic process.
Yeah.
When there's a problem, like that's what's good about having your resources close to you.
And as a matter of fact, that bureaucratic process is something I'm going to be talking about later in this show too. We're going to come across that. I am going to be writing an article in the next day or so, which I hope to post at Clean Technica. And it basically is about the trouble we're going to be in gradually increasing problems between now and the end of the Trump administration.
Yeah.
And there's no way Donald Trump is going to get more gas or oil or coal online by drilling new holes in the ground. It's just not going to happen, and we'll explain that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're up to Friday, May 9th, and we have an item from Renews.
Yeah, so the headline here is Crown confirms 4.7 gigawatts offshore extensions boost.
Yeah, the Crown Estate. The Crown Estate, by the way, is everything that is supposedly owned by the king, only it isn't owned by the king, it's owned by the country. It's called the Crown Estate because technically it's owned by the king, but he doesn't control it. But at any rate, the Crown Estate confirmed that it will proceed with its capacity increase program to maximize the potential of existing seabed leases at 7 UK wind farms. The announcement raises the total capacity at the project by 1.7 gigawatts, a target to deploy up to 50 gigawatts by 2030. That is a huge amount in just a few years.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the United States is shutting things down.
Yeah.
And the UK is, even though that's something that they're talking about, they're worried that they won't be able to get it done fast enough.
Yeah.
But if they wanted to do it with nuclear, it would take 20 years longer and cost 4 times as much.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at a picture of Cardinal Robert Prevost.
Yeah. So headline here is Pope Leo the 14th past comments on growing global crisis resurface. The church must move from words to action.
Cardinal Robert Prevost, 69, is now the new pope. And much like his predecessor, Pope Francis, His Holiness is, quote, outspoken about the need for urgent action, end quote, to address the rising temperatures around the globe. And he is Pope Leo XIV. And this is something that he was acting on for a long time before it came to this. So, do you have anything more to say about him? He's an interesting character, but, he's from Chicago.
Yeah, I do know that. That I know.
I was living in Chicago, or in the Chicago area, actually, a suburb, when he was born, but I never met him.
That's so surprising.
You'd think, I was only a few miles away, and there were a few million people between us.
Too, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go on. I like this picture. This is one that I found when I went looking for pictures.
Yeah.
This is a picture of extreme weather, and the article is from ABC News.
Yeah, so this headline is U.S. will stop tracking the costs of extreme weather fueled by climate change.
NOAA will not track the cost of weather disasters fueled by climate change any longer. This is obviously something they have been told not to do. These include floods, heat waves, wildfires, and other things. The order is the latest example of the Trump administration limiting U.S. government resources on climate change. The interesting thing about this, from my point of view, is that if they said, yes, keep track of this, because we want to find out what's actually happening. If they did that, and it turned out that they're right, that climate change is a hoax, they would find out. But they don't want to find out, clearly, because they're saying, don't tell anybody if there's anything going on. And, I remember, I was a member of the Brattleboro representative town meeting. And for anybody who's watching who doesn't understand, Brattleboro has had for years a town meeting that was inherited from a previous example of an ordinary New England town meeting where anybody who voted could go to the meeting. Now, we've got thousands of potential voters in Brattleboro, so the town meetings just got to the point where they couldn't be housed. So the town decided that it would have representatives elected, although you can get into it in other ways. If there aren't enough representatives from your district, if you can just show up and say, I want to be a representative, and wind up being in the town meeting as a representative. But I think for 12 years maybe, it was for years, a representative in the representative town meeting. And I remember standing up, I think it was about 2017, and I had done a study. And the study was of insurance, the money that was paid for insurance premiums covering flood insurance in the United States from, I think, 1975 to 2015 or thereabouts. So it was 40 years. And it included the time when the national government decided that it was going to undertake flood insurance policies in areas where insurance companies couldn't give it. And the reason for that was because the insurance companies realized that we could have 2 bad hurricanes in the same year.
Yeah.
And if we did, they would go broke, which would not be good for the people they owed money to.
No, and this article talks about insurance.
Yes.
And it also talks about how are we supposed to get information? How are we supposed to find out? How are we supposed to know what to do?
The insurance companies will have their own people do the work of figuring stuff out.
Yeah, and we won't know.
And we won't know.
We won't have any idea.
Yeah.
The public will have no idea. If you make things private without public having access, the public will have no idea what's going on.
I happen to agree with you, yes. Unless, for some reason, the insurance company says, we've got to make this stuff transparent, which they might do because it would be better for them. And the reason I say that is because I had tracked the cost of insurance. Mm-hmm. And in the 40-year period, I had done a back of the envelope calculation and decided that you factor in all kinds of things, and the cost of insurance should have gone up by a factor of 5.5 during that period. It hadn't. It had gone up by a factor of 47. And I remember saying that to the representative town meeting and hearing the kind of hushed gasp that a whole bunch of people had suddenly, and you know, it was, Brattleboro's been hit by that stuff. You go over on William Street. The street goes along the brook there.
Yeah. Yep.
And a bunch of those buildings just got slammed, and they could be lost. And there were other buildings that were lost, and infrastructure can be lost, and the town could be, you know, Brattleboro could be cut off. Really, I mean, my brother lives in Marlboro, and he got home from work and discovered that he had to park at the Chelsea Royal and walk to Marlboro, which was like 5 miles up the hill, because there was no way he could take his car. And that was after, I think it was Irene, but I might be wrong about that.
Right. That's the one that hit pretty.
We've had a couple of storms that were bad. Anyway, I'm going off track, and we should be dealing with the next thing. We're up to Saturday, May 10th.
Yeah.
And we have a thing about, this is a picture of a nuclear plant, but it's not an American nuclear plant. I think it's in, I don't know where it is. But at any rate, the article's from Energy Intelligence.
Yeah, so the headline here is Trump's nuclear energy policy prioritizes deregulation.
The White House is drafting 4 executive orders expected to be released within coming weeks, attempting to expand the ability of the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense to deploy prototype reactors, possibly without the oversight provided by the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So who is going to do this job? People with no experience.
Yeah, I was going to say Elon Musk.
So we're going to be
exactly.
we're going to be telling nuclear companies that they can build nuclear reactors, and the people who are evaluating this are going to be people of the quality of the people who are currently in Donald Trump's cabinet, most of whom are talk show hosts.
Yeah.
And I see, I shouldn't say no indication, because I've met, for example, Tulsi Gabbard several times. I like Tulsi Gabbard very much. I have a great deal of respect for her. I don't know why she's in that group, but anyway, there she is. But I think she would be an exception to what I'm about to say. I don't see any experience among those people that indicates to me that they understand the difference between radio talk show host and expert.
Yeah. The part where someone else has done research and then the other person talks about it. I mean, yes.
It's disturbing. Anyway, you have more?
No, not on this one.
Okay. We are up to an article on the BBC, and we have a wind farm, a solar farm, I'm sorry, courtesy of Boom Energy.
Boom Energy. So the headline here is government approval for large solar farm.
A large solar farm in East Yorkshire, and of course we all know East Yorkshire well because it's just like Vermont, right? Was given a government go-ahead. The solar farm will be built on 3,155 acres of land and will connect to the national grid at the Drax substation. Now the Drax substation, the Drax station is the largest, I think it's the largest power plant in Britain. It used to be 6 big coal-fired units, and I think there might be 3 that are still coal-fired, or maybe they've shut those off. I don't remember, but I know that 3 of them were converted to burn wood that came from clear-cutting the state of Georgia. I'm not happy about that. The developer, Boom Energy, said it will produce 400 megawatts of electricity, providing enough power for 100,000 homes. And my bet is they're going to put battery backup with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there we go.
There we go.
So I'm going to go to the next one, which is a picture of offshore wind turbines from Vestas. Vestas, by the way, I think is still the largest wind turbine manufacturer for offshore turbines in the world. I might be wrong. And this is from the Maritime Executive.
So the headline here is UK increases funding in areas to spur offshore wind energy development.
Offshore wind energy continues to be a key of the UK's plan for renewable energy, with the government announcing that it will expand funding in the available areas in response to industry demand. The goal is 50 gigawatts of offshore wind power by 2030, which is just an incredible amount. And I want to point out here, offshore wind has a very much higher capacity factor than onshore wind, which is one of the reasons they want to develop it. The capacity factor for offshore wind farms can be actually above 50%. So that means they're running at the equivalent of full capacity 50% of the time or more.
That's incredible.
And wind turbines don't run at full capacity very often. They vary from a low to a high. The high is 100%. The low is they're producing something 98% of the time, I have read. But this capacity factor means that these things produce a little bit more than half as much out of the same amount of capacity as a nuclear power plant would. So this is the equivalent of 25 large nuclear power plants that they're going to build in 5 years.
Yeah.
So, and it's going to cost them a lot less, by the way, than nuclear power plants.
Yeah, it's a political decision. It's a political decision. It has nothing to do with politics, but it's a political decision.
Well, the thing is, I keep referring back to this one thing that I've seen in the spring, I think it was March of 2022, NextEra Energy, which is the largest utility in the United States, announced what it was going to be investing in for the next 10 years. And it was saying it was going to invest in solar power, wind power, batteries. And that's it. No gas, no nuclear, nothing. And they gave the reasons why. On page 122, if you want to look it up, of that report, the report is easily available online. You just look for stockholder report, NextEra Energy 2022. I think you should find it pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. It's a 250-page PDF file, so it's not exactly small. But you look on page 122 and you'll see why they're not investing in nuclear, because it's too expensive.
Yes.
And the electricity that comes from it is going to cost 3 times as much as the electricity that comes from what is called near-firm solar or near-firm wind. Near-firm meaning backed up with enough battery that it is as reliable as nuclear energy for dispatching energy in peak demand periods. So why would you want to build a nuclear power plant?
Well, especially when, the sun and the wind are free.
Yeah, well, one thing that you do get from nuclear power plants that you don't get from solar and wind power is nuclear waste. And the Chinese have announced to the world that they can make tiny batteries powered by nuclear waste, which you don't want to put in your pocket, but they will keep going for 50 years. You don't look thrilled.
I'm not interested in having nuclear waste in my pocket. That's just not something I'm interested in.
Yeah, I know exactly how you feel. And this thing, by the way, I look at literally hundreds of articles every day, typically upwards of 250, 300 per day, which is why it takes me 5 hours to get through my daily blog. I don't read all those articles, but I look at where they come from and the titles and stuff like that. And the number of places that have carried articles about that and Chinese invention of an tiny atomic battery, the number of places is just unbelievable. But I would not want to have one of those batteries around me, period. Okay, we're going to go on.
Yeah.
And the next thing here, this is a beautiful picture. And for the life of me, I can't figure the sky out. That does not look like any sky I've ever seen.
It's drama. It's definitely a dramatic sky.
Well, it's a sky above Morocco, and I've never been in Morocco. And maybe the sky in Morocco is different than it is here. This is from the Mid-Africa Times.
Yeah, so the headline here is Australian giant Fortescue plans 100 gigawatt renewable energy hub in Morocco.
100 gigawatts?
100 gigawatt.
Okay, Australian energy group Fortescue, which is led by billionaire Andrew Forrest, an interesting guy, is developing an ambitious project to transform Morocco, I think it's going to be less than the whole country, but into a green energy bridge between Africa and Europe. And I think Morocco would really like to go along with this.
Really smart.
The initiative aims to establish 100 gigawatts of solar and wind capacity in North Africa. Now, that energy could be taken across the Straits of Gibraltar to Spain.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have been to I've been to Grenada.
Oh really?
And I almost went to Morocco, but I didn't end up going. But it's like so close, and you have the Alhambra.
Yeah.
And it's just so beautiful. But yeah, it's. To me, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That you would have a hub there because you have Europe, access to Europe right there, and then
right there.
And then that's the beginning.
Yes.
Where you have an entire other continent right there.
Yes.
So.
And what's in that other continent? The Sahara Desert, which is gigantic, and very few people live there. Very few animals live there. My personal view is that we should be greening the Sahara Desert. But that's another issue. By the way, there is a couple of years ago, we had a story about a submarine transmission system that would go from Morocco to the UK. And, you know, that would fit in perfectly with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Our next item is from the Times. We have a picture of offshore wind power. That's a generic picture.
Yes. And the headline here is, "We mustn't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory on wind power."
The news that Ørsted is downing tools on the massive Hornsea 4 offshore wind farm may be a shock, but rough winds have been buffeting the industry for some time. The UK has led the world on offshore wind, and it still can, despite the squall that hit Hornsea 4. Now, there's more news from the United States on a very similar issue. And I don't know, do you have something to talk about on this? We'll get to it, general stuff, in the next, in that thing when it comes up. So I'll just skip on.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a picture here. Man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was interested in this for several reasons, not the least of which is this comes from Kosovo Press, which I believe is from
Kosovo.
Kosovo. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a weird place to begin with. My daughter, by the way, is right now, I believe she might have already left, but she was in Montenegro, which is like almost next door to Kosovo. But that's a fascinating area.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So the headline here is, Japan and China are in a race for space solar power plants.
China launched a project to build an orbiting space solar plant that would produce more energy than what can be obtained from all sources on Earth. That's kind of hard to swallow. Meanwhile, Japan announced that it was also on track to begin transmitting solar energy from space to Earth early next year.
Stop. That's why.
What?
I'm just saying stop with this. Yeah, stop space. It's just too much.
How much money is this going to cost, and how much would you get if you spent that money on Earth?
Yeah.
I don't know, but, you know, I mean, I have a couple of notes on this, one of which is NASA says that space-based array, which is what this is, could generate electricity 99% of the time. And China aims to have 2 gigawatts in space by 2050. And my guess is that this is going to cost more than nuclear power.
Right, you're talking about space. It's like you're just adding in another gigantic chunk of money.
Yeah, and you're also adding in another gigantic chunk of risk, I think, that nobody has thought of.
Because people don't understand how risky and how I mean, just look at the history of NASA launches and just know that it's not a given that it's actually going to work at all.
And once you've got this thing in space, it's transmitting power back to Earth. And how is that being done? Well, it's probably being done using microwaves, which is beautiful because they go right through clouds. But what happens if some, little pea-sized meteor just happens to hit this array and tilt it a little bit, and it's sending those microwaves to the wrong place? I have no idea. I'm just imagining things that could go wrong, and I'm troubled by this. So, okay, we're up to Monday, May 12th, and we have an item from Renews. Floating wind turbines from Cerulean, that's from Cerulean Winds.
Yeah, the headline here is Cerulean's 1 gigawatt Aspen floater to support 1,000 jobs.
Cerulean Winds said that the 1 gigawatt Aspen floater wind project in the UK's central North Sea is expected to support more than 1,000 jobs and attract total investment of 10.9 billion over its lifespan. Now, let's think about that for a minute. This is 1 gigawatt. It's probably correct that it's going to attract investments of 10.9 billion because this isn't the nuclear industry, which is always wrong. This is the wind industry, which is almost always right. I should have said the nuclear industry is almost always wrong, not always wrong. Aspen is being built by several partners with experience in large-scale offshore projects. I want to point out also, this is a floating a floating wind farm, which means that it's not tied by a stationary mast to the bottom of the ocean, which means that it can be put in deeper ocean than we would have had previously. And this $10.9 billion is for 1 gigawatt. And if this were 1 gigawatt of nuclear, I would have expected it to be much more than that up front. So, and by the way, repowering a nuclear power plant is not cheap. It's like $100 million to repower Vermont Yankee. So this is
probably not a good idea.
Yeah, you don't want that nuclear. Really, the nuclear fuel that goes into nuclear reactors is theoretically safe to stand right next to. And, it's not likely to harm you very much because it's just, uranium. And uranium isn't that bad. Once it's been in that plant for a couple of years and you pull it out and you stand next to it, I would say maybe less than a minute, you're going to die soon because it's different stuff. Highly, highly, highly radioactive. Because the business of breaking the atoms into pieces, you don't know what it's going to be breaking those into what's going to come out. It's a matter of probability, and they've got the probability tables and so forth, so they know it's going to be 3% of this and 10% of that. But the stuff that comes up originally is just random, mostly radioactive stuff. And it mostly has half-lives that some of them are less than a second. And, you get near that stuff in the first 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and you have a serious problem. Okay, should I go on?
Yeah, that's good.
We have a turbine installation vessel, and it is installing a wind turbine.
Yeah, so the headline here is first turbine in place at 488 megawatt French offshore wind farm.
Everybody's building this offshore stuff.
So many megawatts.
Yes, this is from Renews. Ocean Winds is celebrating the installation of the first turbine at the 488 megawatt Ile de, whoa, how do you pronounce that? I don't know. EMYN, how about that? Offshore wind farm. Yes. In total, 61 Siemens Gamesa 8 megawatt turbines will be installed. 8 megawatts is big. And you're not going to see any around Brattleboro because there's no way you could install those things using current technology in Brattleboro. They will be installed at the French offshore wind project between May and September of this year. 488 megawatts.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. And that's just May to September.
That's very soon.
That's very soon. They can do big changes to their grids very quickly. If they were doing nuclear, it would be that it was said to be coming online, and it will take about 10 years. And of course, 10 years from now, it would be halfway done. And then the company comes and says, listen, we told you it was going to be $6 billion, but it turns out it's going to be 15. Now, you've got two choices. You could just eat the $6 billion and leave things done the way they are now and not have the nuclear plant ever, or we could finish it for you, and it just all you have to do is pony up another $9 billion.
Yeah.
A billion here, a billion there. Sooner or later, you're talking about real money.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to this horrible looking thing. This is the increases in CO2 emissions.
Yeah, so this is from Clean Technica, and the headline here is carbon dioxide in the atmosphere surged in 2024.
That bar, that vertical bar that's all the way to the right, is the annual increase in carbon dioxide. That's not the amount of carbon dioxide, it's just the increase in carbon dioxide. And I want to point out, at this point, having known that this is a problem for years, we should be seeing a negative part to this graph, and the amount of increase of carbon dioxide should be negative now. We should be drawing this stuff down.
Yes.
It's not working. We're getting to a point where the amount of carbon dioxide that we are releasing is just growing year by year. And let me read the synopsis. The latest update from NOAA, N-O-A-A, the National Ocean, I'm not going to say it. NOAA shows an alarming increase in carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, and no one is quite sure how to explain it. Okay, maybe that's a good message, because if we don't know how to explain it, maybe we'll find an explanation that is not as bad as what we might imagine. If the president has his way, NOAA will never have enough staff or funding to find the answer. But clearly, the levels are accelerating rather than slowing. What are we going to do about this?
Not much if we don't know about it. There's not much we can do if we don't know about it.
That's true, yeah.
And if it's privatized, how does the public get access to that information?
Well, today, I think it was today, if it was yesterday, it'll be in the show, but I don't remember, but I think it was today, there is an indication that the carbon dioxide emissions from China have finally gone into decline. And, so China's way out ahead of us, and
oh, yeah.
We've known that for a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we're up to Tuesday, May 13th.
Yeah.
We have a generic picture of a solar farm and an item from Renew Economy, which, by the way, is an Australian publication, and I am furious about this because this article did not appear in a single American news outlet that I could find.
Yeah.
Let's hear this is from Renew Economy.
Yeah, so the headline here is solar and wind make up 98% of U.S. generating capacity added in Trump's first 3 months.
This is important. Analysis of government data revealed that solar and wind accounted for nearly 98% of new electricity generating capacity of the United States in the first quarter of 2025, despite efforts by Donald Trump to unravel clean energy efforts. Now, I want to point out, Donald Trump has said that he wants to revive coal. There's no way he can do that. Coal plants are scheduled to be shut down. There are none waiting to be built. None. Not high probability construction, not any construction. So the amount of coal being used for electricity is simply going to go down, and the same is probably true of coal being used for steel making and so forth. He ran on a promise, drill baby drill.
Yep.
And it isn't happening. And I think we might get to that. Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. We'll get to that.
We will get to that in a couple of stories, but that's what he said, and it isn't happening. And there's really good explanations for why it's not going to happen, and they are based in reality instead of dreamland. Nuclear power plants, we've got 0 scheduled to be built. It takes, maybe we're going to have an age in which small modular reactors are built, but they're going to be built in factories if they are, and nobody's building a factory yet. So the factory has to be built
Right.
before they can do anything else. Wind farms, Donald Trump is no longer allowing wind farms to be built on U.S.-owned soil that's owned by the federal government, or offshore. In other words, the only way we can expand our electric generation system is by going to solar power. And the American factories are not big enough to supply current demand, but the demand is going to go up, and solar power solar panels coming from overseas are subject to tariffs.
Yep.
So what I'm saying is, a couple of years down the line, regardless of Google and all those companies saying we want big power plants to support artificial intelligence and so forth, a couple of years down the line, we're going to be running into serious problems getting electricity. And I don't know how we're going to deal with that.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion. I will bring it up on another show. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Our next item is from Renews. Again.
Yeah. So the headline here is Empire Wind faces axe within days.
Okay, Equinor was told by the Trump administration that they could no longer build the Empire Wind project. They could appeal, they could do whatever they want to do in that respect, but they've got to do something. Let me read the synopsis. Equinor reportedly said it will be forced to terminate the Empire Wind project, quote, within days, end quote, unless President Donald Trump's administration makes a U-turn on an order that halted construction. The order stopped the United States offshore wind project after Equinor had already invested $2.5 billion. Now, there is a lesson to be learned here, and it can be learned by everybody all over the world. If you want to make an investment in renewable energy, don't do it in the United States. And the reason is because your contract can be terminated at the whim of whoever happens.
It's unstable. Unstable.
We are an unstable country.
Yeah.
And we've got to get that stability back. And getting that stability back is not going to be easy.
Not going to be easy. Not going to be easy.
Donald Trump is interested in brand. He talks about the value of his brand.
Yep.
And the damage that has been done by instability and chaos and so forth to the American brand is, I have not seen a calculation of it, but it's got to be in the trillions of dollars.
Yep.
Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, let's go on.
Let's go on. We have a picture of a pump jack.
Yeah, so this one is from CNN, and the headline here is "So much for drill, baby, drill."
Yeah, and this is the one I was referring to when I said, you know, it's not working out. Hurt by weakened demand and depressed prices, U.S. oil production is expected to shrink in 2026, S&P Global Commodity Insights projected. S&P, that's Standard & Poor's, by the way, in case anybody wants to know, estimates that U.S. oil output will dip to 13.3 million barrels per day in 2026, 130,000 barrels less than its 2025 forecast. Oil production fell for the last time during the COVID pandemic. What's happening here is...
It happened with Trump. I mean, when you talk about the COVID pandemic, that's Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in this particular case, it's tariffs.
Yep.
To a very large extent. It's Donald Trump allowing, encouraging other countries in the world to try to keep prices on oil down, which will benefit American car owners a little bit. That's, you can say, yeah, the price of gas fell from $3.10 a gallon to $2.99. That's what Donald Trump has done for us. But the problem is at the price of oil that his policies are encouraging, an oil company in the United States can't make money. So why is it going to drill? The fact that it can drill doesn't mean it will. And on top of everything else, it's got to use equipment, much of which either is imported or consists of parts that are imported and subject to tariff. So their costs are going up, and their production is already being done at a price that is not economically viable for them.
Well, my one note here is stop trying to give us oil that we don't need.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think we're in trouble, and the trouble is going to surface very soon, within 3 years. And I don't see how it's avoidable, except if the policies in Washington, D.C. suddenly become sane. And as I said, we've got a Donald Trump and a cabinet that is full of amateurs who play games.
Yes.
It's very discouraging. Okay, we're up to Wednesday, May 14th, and we have a picture of a heat wave.
Yeah, so we have from ABC News, extreme heat will make it feel more like August than May for Texas and southeast U.S.
Triple-digit temperatures are more commonly seen in the throes of summer and not in the spring. And they're making an unwelcome visit to Texas and other parts of the southeastern United States this week, placing millions of Americans under extreme heat warnings. And that is that.
That would be sad if we didn't know that we were getting extreme heat in a warning. It's good that we had that there's that warning at this moment, and that warning
because the warning might not come in the summer when there's a hurricane on its way.
Well, the warning might not come then, and also if we're taking away NOAA and replacing it with private, how are we even going to know? How are we going to know?
We aren't going to know that quickly because we'd have to build up whatever replaces NOAA from scratch.
Yep.
And I don't know how that's going to be done. If Mar-a-Lago is hit by a Category 5 hurricane and sinks to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, we can only say, don't tell us we didn't tell you that this could happen. I'm not predicting it, but you know, if a big hurricane is headed for the United States and NOAA can't predict it, how is Donald Trump going to protect his property? And then his property is destroyed, and by golly, the insurance doesn't cover it. What does he do then?
More debt. More loans. That's fine.
Well, he can sell that airplane.
Yeah.
Only he can't sell it until he's out of office. You know the airplane. He was given a $400 million airplane by Qatar with everything inside gold-plated. I don't know.
It's a new toy.
Huh?
It's a new toy.
New toy, yeah. Okay, we have a picture of a flood and an item from The Equation, which, by the way, is the publication of the concerned scientists.
Union of Concerned Scientists?
Yeah, that's it.
I see, okay. Yeah, so the headline here is Trump administration attempts burying climate change evidence to further fossil fuel agenda.
What? To limit the damage of the climate crisis, the country must transition quickly from fossil fuels to clean energy and invest in resilience. The administration is hell-bent on doing the exact opposite. What better way than to hide facts and spread lies? And what they're saying is, you know, it's like going into a store and handing a person a credit card and saying, this'll work. And if you call and ask whether the amount I'm spending is covered and they say no, it's because you called the wrong number. What are you going to do? I mean, sooner or later, the cost is put before you. All right, should we go on to the last item?
Yeah, let's do the last item.
Okay, this is the last thing. This is a picture of a floating wind turbine, and you see that yellow thing on the bottom of the screen. That's the float, and this is from Renews.
Yeah, the headline here is Ocean Winds celebrates Portuguese floater.
Ocean Winds, a 50-50 joint venture between EDP Renováveis and Engie, and I don't know how to pronounce Portuguese, so please forgive me, is celebrating 5 years of successful operator in the 25-megawatt wind float Atlantic project, the first semi-submersible floating offshore wind farm in the world. So it's been there for 5 years and it hasn't blown away yet.
Yeah.
Located approximately 20 kilometers off the coast of Portugal. 20 kilometers is 12 miles, I guess. So you should be able to see these things from shore on a clear day. But, you know, it's working. There we have it. And this was a week.
Yeah.
98% of, and solar has been the number 1 capacity addition in the United States for 19 months in a row. And, you know, the Trump administration doesn't have the answers. Even assuming that they were right about fossil fuels not being a problem and climate change being a hoax and so forth.
But the sun's always there. It's free. What? It's like, what? Understand.
That's the problem.
Yes, I know.
That is the problem.
That is with business. Yes, I understand that.
Yeah, it's like, why would you pay money on nuclear power when you can get the wind for free?
Yeah.
It's because if you charge a lot of money, then a lot of money is going by and you can grab little bits of it here and there and you can, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that they steal the money, but it is kind of like stealing the money because it's fraudulent to say that anybody is going to save money by investing in nuclear power or ultimately in gas or coal or whatever. It doesn't matter. And that's why that item that is in the 2023 Next Era Energy Handbook for its stockholders. They were telling the stockholders, it's a report to the stockholders, why that chart on page 122 is so important. Because it shows very clearly that in 2030, the cheapest source of electricity by far will be solar and wind. And the only thing that really comes close to them is nuclear power that has already been paid down. And in order to get that, you've got to pay down a nuclear power plant, which is going to cost billions of dollars.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, and these plants, I've known people who have had a bumper sticker that said, when there is an unexpected spill of solar power, it's called a sunny day.
True.
Yeah.
True.
So we're expressing this hope for everybody.
Yeah.
That we wish everybody to have an ineffably beautiful week. What does ineffably mean? It means you can't even say. It means it's so beautiful you don't have words for it.
Fantastic. That's great.
Yeah. So we hope you come back next time. We hope you enjoyed this show. We hope things get better in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere around the world. There you go. Bye.